Not on my shift.
But where are my chips?
Welcome back to Ghost Seekers. With me again is my friend Matt. And Matt, I wanted to talk a bit about some study that's being put out by Nancy Ann Tapp. Perhaps you've read some of her work about indigo children and these people that seem to just shine a little brighter, even beyond, any family raising that they had. Big people that are in the media these days, like Shania Twain and Celine Dion and even the Backstreet Boys. Any of these young people that seem to have no stopping them when it comes to their career, and the media is just drawn to them. How do these indigo children or indigo people perhaps act more as a conduit for ghost sighting?
A lot of people, not knowing, even refer to indigo children as somebody having that indescribable presence about them. With specifically when you get into the world of the unseen world, and you deal with indigo children, they are people who have an inner light, an inner power that touches every aspect of their lives. Being with them, you feel better, you feel more creative, you feel you can accomplish more. And with that power comes a draw, almost like a magnet. So think of ghosts or spirits that are trying to get something accomplished or trying to make their presence known. If an indigo child is there, they will be drawn to that person.
So from a ghost seeking situation that we would try to set up, would having someone with this who, and whether we can identify them specifically as an indigo child or an indigo person, having them present could act as more of a magnet for ghost activity?
For positive and negative ghost activity, yes. Think of it as a power source or a battery. If there's some sort of negative force like a shadow lord or a harbinger around, that they will be drawn to an indigo child the same as if enlightened spirit or a ghost.
Tell our viewers a little more about the shadow lords.
A shadow lord is a spirit. It was never a being on earth that has died. It is a spirit of anger and of fear. Its sole purpose, its only way to survive on our plane, is to draw on the fear of human beings. It does things specifically to terrify you. It learns about you. It finds your buttons, and it does whatever it has to scare you and terrify you. The more fear you have, the stronger it becomes, and the more things it can do. So if you're in an area with an indigo child, and it's a shadow lord, it is doubly powerful. It would be able to move physical objects, touch you physically, harm you physically. On the flip side, if it was a ghost, you have a better chance of interacting with the ghost, and the ghost realizing you're there, you're physical, and that there's something that needs a connection to be made.
Our viewers are probably familiar with the three spirits that visit Scrooge in the story A Christmas Carol. Would these be shadow lords, or maybe only the third one that gives them his terrifying?
They are spirits. They are concepts. In general, spirits are concept. You can have a spirit of Christmas. You can have a spirit of vengeance. They are the embodiment of a concept. So I wouldn't call them specifically shadow lords because they're not drawing their power.
What would you call them?
I would call them spirits. They are drawing their power on their concept. For example, a spirit of Christmas past. It's drawing its power on revisiting past and taking someone to revisit. It's drawing on that energy. Same thing with a harbinger. It is drawn to great disaster. If you see one, there is a horrific disaster coming. Now, does it cause the disaster, or is it just present to feed on the chaos afterwards? That's anybody's guess. That's up to.
How do we envision the difference between a shadow lord and a harbinger? What could we see?
The best description I've ever heard of a shadow lord is, imagine being in a pitch black room and seeing something darker than the darkness around you. It is a manifestation of a pitch black shadow that can be seen in absolute darkness.
That's as someone who's trying to capture things on film, You haven't made it any easier for me, Matt.
Not, the harbingers are a little different. There was a case in the States where they're referred to as a mothman, where it's a large creature with black wings and red eyes, and these, and it was there for a great disaster of a bridge that collapsed. So that would be, and it seems to have a more physical form. So that would be, of the two I've just discussed, that would be the easier to find.
It's funny how fear is universal. There's certainly images that seem to strike terror in every society for generations and for centuries.
Well, every culture on Earth has a version of the vampire. So this is a universal fear of the dead coming back and affecting the living. And that is in general, with ghosts and things of the unseen world, it is the fear that often generates the power that the ghost or spirit needs to affect our world.
So by frightening its victim, it can then be revealed.
Yes.
And that's the only way that it can be revealed.
Yes.
Is by creating that energy in the victim to then respond to its presence.
Without fear, there can be no power.
That's great. Okay, thanks, Matt. We'll be right back.
From fruit by the foot, the fun never ends.
Welcome back to Ghost Seekers. We were talking earlier with my friend Matt, and now, Brian, you've actually read the book about the Mothman prophecies, and we were talking with Matt about the manifestation of the type of ghost that literally frightens the hell out of people. What did you find out in that book as to the evidence that's actually occurred?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of urban legends out there about different kinds of ghosts, but unlike a lot of the other ones people have heard about, this one seems to have a little more facts kind of behind it. Definitely some evidence that can be explored.
Tell us about it. I haven't read the book yet, but I want
Okay,
to.
so the book is The Mothman Prophecies by Jonathan Keel. Basically what it looks at is a series of sightings followed by a disaster in Point Pleasant, Virginia in the late 60s. So what happened?
This is nonfiction.
This is real. This really happened. There were government employees that witnessed things going on. Basically, it began with a couple couples traveling through the area, and they claimed that this giant creature with big red eyes, mostly black, with what they described as a 10-foot wingspan, was chasing their car. And so they reported that to the police. And if that was the end of it, we probably never would have heard about it. But following that, there were a bunch of other sightings, including ones by members of the fire departments. Now we've actually got government people who have seen it. And then with that, not long after, so in the next couple of years, in 1968, the bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant. And then what was sort of interesting about that was that there were another sort of burst of sightings before the bridge collapsed, and absolutely none after. So a lot of people feel that there's sort of a connection between those sightings and that disaster. And more to that is that there were a lot of people who claim to have had premonitions, visions of this bridge collapsing before it happened. And some of them had claimed to see the Mothman as well. So there's more than circumstantial evidence linking it, simply because there's actually people working for the government who have witnessed it. Now clearly there is no one running election platforms on this, but when you have firefighters and the sheriff of a town claiming to have seen this thing, it gives a little more credence than your typical ghost story.
Obviously, there's no physical evidence. We don't have any Super 8 film of it or anything like that at that time. It's not like nowadays when everybody makes a VHS tape themselves at home with their
Well, there's
camera.
no physical evidence like you're describing, like a tape, but I mean, there's lots of transcripts. People reported these. There are official government reports that deal with this. A lot of it's in the book. And also, I mean, just that fact that there are hard documents written at the time claiming this was it was. It wasn't written 30 years later, talking about it after. It was written at the time by people who were reporting it, and then there was a collapse. So, I mean, there's got to be something to that, I would think.
Do you think going back to that area might bring back any evidence for it?
Well, the one thing with that is that really nothing's really been reported about it since the 60s. So with the bridge collapsing for whatever reason, if it is related, that was sort of the end of the sighting. So you'd be a little late. It'd be like going to Germany to see the fall of the Berlin Wall. You kind of missed it. But nevertheless, if you could talk to some of the people, I think that's where you'd start to make some grounds. I mean,
obviously, there's people who still live there.
Absolutely, there would be.
That recall this.
And you would imagine sort of a small town like that, it would be a very powerful part of local lore. Many people would be aware what you want to do is sort of get through the, oh, I had a friend who said blah, 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 and get to the actual people, you know, who are in the government reports and still alive. I think that's where you'd have to start the investigation.
Sounds like somewhere we need to go.
Absolutely.
What? No chips?
It's okay, ma'am. It never ends.
Welcome back to Ghost Seekers. Brian, before the break, we were talking about the book you read, Mothman Prophecies, and I want to talk a bit about the premonition aspect, and people had a premonition that a bridge was going to collapse, and then the bridge collapsed. How many people were killed?
There were 46 people for that day.
46 people killed on the bridge, and a lot of different people, not just one person claiming to be a psychic or something like that, had a premonition about this in advance.
Well, and that's the main thing, is that these people weren't psychics at all. They never claimed to be psychics. They were just regular, everyday people. And yet, this one event, there were so many of them that it's sort of like, I've dreamt about this. I thought this was going to happen before it happened, and it did. And, you know, because it's such a small town, essentially they saw each other. And because there was already this investigation going on with the Mothman prophecy, it kind of led perhaps like a broader perspective on the issues. You know, that have, obviously every time a bridge collapses, they don't go around interviewing people to see, like, did you dream about this the day before? But in this case, with this extra investigation, it brought a higher level of scrutiny than what it existed before.
You mentioned dreams. Recently, I was speaking with a woman who had a premonition in a dream. She actually experienced in the dream being involved in a head-on collision in her car. She was so convinced that this was going to happen that the next day she set her alarm to go off 3 hours earlier. Got up at 4:30 in the morning instead of normally getting up at 7:30 to commute to work, because she figured by doing so she could avoid a head-on collision. In her mind, that was the rationale. While she's driving to work, she sees a car literally driving towards her in her lane. When she swerves, it swerves, still getting closer and closer. She finally makes a desperate maneuver at the last minute, and she described her car going up on two wheels as she passed the other car. When this car went past her, it actually collided head-on with the car right behind her and killed the occupants of both vehicles. And somehow, what adjusted by the 3-hour time difference that she expected. This seems to be somehow in a dream state that people have a more heightened awareness of predictions, premonitions, and that kind of thing. How seriously do you take things that you see in your dreams as to are they going to happen?
Well, I think everyone's experienced some form of deja vu at some point in their life, but I mean, everyone, you know, once in a while, will have some kind of dream which just sort of really rocks them. You know, you wake up,
now appear